Hey everybody, Yankee here. I want to come on here today and talk about how the state of Washington has effectively suspended the Second Amendment within its borders. And before I talk about that, I want to say, there's one thing you should know about me. If you've watched my channel for any time, you know I am a Second Amendment absolutist. I'm not just a gun lover or a hobbyist. I actually believe in the Second Amendment, and I work hard to make sure that it remains in effect in this country. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people that claim they're pro-2A are actually just pro-gun. And they're more than happy to support things like background checks, which are infringements on people's rights. They say, oh, we need these infringements for safety. If you're putting safety ahead of freedom, well, then you don't support the Second Amendment. You are a fraud if you say you're pro-Second Amendment and you support things like background checks. That's one of the most FUD things you can do. If you say, I'm Second Amendment, but, background checks because we got to keep some people from having guns, that's FUD right there, in a nutshell. And I know, unfortunately, that most people in the gun community are okay with background checks because it doesn't affect them. They're more than happy to support some restrictions and some infringements if it doesn't take away their rights or affect their lives. And they're especially happy to do it if it takes away the rights from people that maybe they don't think should have those rights. These people are hypocrites, and I am not someone who actually supports them or takes that lightly. So I get really offended when the Second Amendment is violated. And that's one of the most common violations that we see is background checks. And I want to talk today how background checks are dangerous. Not just because they often prevent people from obtaining a firearm in time to defend themselves. We've seen multiple circumstances where women especially have gone to get a firearm to defend themselves from a violent ex or something. And during their waiting period for their background check, they're murdered in their own driveway, beaten to death, strangled, which could have been prevented if they were able to go exercise their rights as free citizens. And some people be like, well, it's not just that, though. We got to accept things like that because we got to stop violent people, dangerous people from having guns. That's why we got to support background checks. Well, who decides who's dangerous? If you're truly dangerous to society, you should be in prison. If they've deemed you safe and let you out, well, then you should have all your rights back. And who historically are the most dangerous people? Free thinkers, people that speak out against injustice, people who don't follow the status quo. So gun owners and gun supporters, Second Amendment supporters, could easily be put in that category pretty soon. So those infringements you're okay with now because they don't affect you because you're not a criminal, they could affect you pretty soon when they declare you a part of a dangerous cult. But today, like I said, I want to talk about how background checks are being used to effectively suspend the Second Amendment in the state of Washington. In Washington state right now, the government is claiming there has been an intrusion into their computer systems, the ones that they use for the courts, etc. Now, at first they were making it sound like, oh, we were locked out. It's a hijacking. It's one of those ransom things. But that's not the case. Reporters in the state have found out that's not the case at all. What it turns out is they found some suspicious activity. So they shut down their own systems. And it mainly affects the courts. And they said that, well, because of this, we can't really do the court stuff and we can't process background checks. So if you put in for a background check, we have to have it back within a certain amount of time and then you have a 10-day waiting period in this state. Well, that's all effectively put on hold, meaning no one who has bought a gun this month has been approved to pick up that firearm. So your Second Amendment rights are being suspended because they say they have a problem with their computer system. Now, if you ask me, and by the way, I'm one of these people, because remember, they sent me that SDR to test and then give away for charity, and I can't get it, even though my waiting period should be over now. It should have been approved, and my waiting period should be over. Can't, because my Second Amendment rights mean nothing in this state right now. And like I was saying, that, I think, is just a way for them to suspend rights. I don't really follow the logic of why they're being denied, and I don't buy the story, to be honest. I kind of think, and now I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theories, but since this is affecting the courts and they're being very, shady about what's actually going on, I think a lot of this was so that they could say, well, our court systems aren't functioning right now during the election month. So if people go out and riot and destroy things and do bad things because Donald Trump won, well, how do we prosecute them? We'll just have to give them a free pass. I think that's a lot of it. And I think the denying people their Second Amendment rights is just another thing that they get to do, another thing they get to use this for. And that's where background checks are dangerous, because the very fact that you have surrendered that right to the government, that they first get to check you out to see if you are worthy of your rights, even though you're a free citizen, you're not in jail, or else you wouldn't be in a gun shop buying a gun. They get to decide, and you're okay with that if you support background checks. And since you've given them that authority, now all they got to do is say, well, we can't accurately do what we're supposed to do, so your rights are suspended. And a lot of people are throwing a fit. The SAF is going to sue the state of Washington, Second Amendment Foundation. But still, all these people have been prevented from buying anything. So that is a huge infringement. Like I said, our rights are being suspended, all because people have been convinced that you need to surrender those rights to the government to be safe. And once you surrender those rights, you almost never get them back. And once they start abusing them like this, you have to wonder, how are they going to abuse it in the future? How often are things like this going to happen? And all they have to do is say something like, oh, our computers are down, therefore you can't have your rights. I don't know about you, but I don't think my constitutional rights should be dependent on your old, Dell computer that you bought 80 years ago still working. So I am not happy with it all. And this is just another example of why people shouldn't be FUDs. They shouldn't support background checks. Don't support surrendering your right to the government. Because once you give them a little bit of power, they'll take more and more and more. And once you give them a little bit of authority over your rights like that, to be able to suspend your rights or to even just verify that you deserve your rights, well, they're going to think of ways to abuse that. They're going to delay things. They're going to say, oh, well, we've decided there's a new group of people now that don't qualify. Because if you tell them that, oh, yeah, people that were ever convicted of a crime, they're a felon, well, then they'll just make felons. They'll make everybody felons. Or they'll add things to that list. Well, felons can't have it. Oh, and people that are accused of domestic violence, we've already seen that happening. Well, they also can't, exercise their rights. Oh, what about people who get DUIs? There's lots of states that have been trying to put that on the list of denied people. And then eventually, well, what about people that are dissidents? Troublemakers. Well, they can't get approved either. And that's all because a lot of people went, oh, but what if bad guys get guns? Well, bad guys get guns regardless. They don't usually buy them through FFLs. So that argument in itself, on its face, is ridiculous. And all it does is trick you into surrendering your rights to the government, where they can suspend your right. Any right that they have power over, regulating whether you get it or not, then you don't have that. It's not a right. If they can stop it, it's not a right. So that's why I urge people out there, stop just being pro-gun. Stop just being pro-Second Amendment, on its face only. But we got to accept these infringements. Start saying, these are our rights. The government doesn't have a right to vet me to see if I have free speech, or vet me to see if I have freedom from illegal searches. Because they're wanting to do that too. Hell, Donald Trump himself is wanting to give police complete immunity for violating your rights, even seizing your property. So people need to wake up. And it doesn't matter if someone's got a D or an R after their name. When they try to take your rights away, say no. Don't be tricked into saying, well, it's only going to affect these people. Because eventually those people become you people, as in us, and that's not good. And we're seeing it right now in the state of Washington, and don't say it can't happen in your state, because it can happen in any state. All it takes is one election, or one turncoat, or one bad apple at the top, and things start going wrong. So take what's going on in the state of Washington right now, where our Second Amendment rights have been suspended, as a lesson in why you shouldn't be a FUD. And you shouldn't surrender your rights just for the illusion of safety. Remember what Benjamin Franklin said. If you surrender rights, and I'm paraphrasing, for the illusion of safety, well, you're neither safe nor do you have rights. So keep that in mind and reevaluate where you stand on your own opinions, on your own beliefs in the Second Amendment. Because if you're someone that believes in infringements and given the state power, this is what can happen. Hey everybody, Yankee here. Just want to remind everyone that Toy Guns for Tots 2024 is in full swing. If you can at all afford to do so, please go over to my website. There's a link in the upper right corner of this video and donate to help provide a toy gun for a child in need this year and make their Christmas a very merry one.